Nah, not quite.
What's up?
Sell my car on Carvana. It's just not quite the right time.
Crazy coincidence. I just sold my car to Carvana.
What? I told you about it 2 days ago.
When you know, you know. You know? I'm even dropping it off at one of those sweet car vending machines and getting paid today.
That's a good deal.
Oh, great deal. Come on. What's your heart saying?
You're right. When you know.
You know.
Sold.
Whether you're looking to sell your car right now or just whenever feels right, go to Carvana.com and sell your car the convenient way. Terms and conditions apply.
Build up to Black Friday with savings all month long at Lowe's. Get up to 50% off select major appliances. Plus take an additional 10% off when you buy select major appliances. And don't wait to pick up holiday inflatables under $20. Don't wait to save, in-store or online now, because Lowe's knows deals. Valid 11/6 through 12/4. Cannot be combined with additional discounts. See Lowe's.com for details and qualifying items while supplies last.
Welcome to the Idaho Sheriff Livestream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. I'm your co-host, Dawna Wilson, here to screen your questions and comments. Together, we focus our discussions on all things liberty without compromise. To submit a question or comment, just type directly into the comments section of whichever platform you're watching. For the best, most interactive, and full screen experience, I encourage you to join our Facebook or YouTube live feed. Also, thank you to those listening later on the Idaho Sheriff podcast. Take a moment to share the live stream to your page or profile so your friends and family can join in tonight. Now, here is the only candidate for Kootenai County Sheriff endorsed by Sheriff Richard Mack and former heavyweight champion David Nino Rodriguez. This is Dan Wilson.
Good evening, folks. How y'all doing tonight? Notice I said y'all, since everyone says y'all.
You're so
South.
late to that game.
How are y'all doing? Did I do it better?
2 times in a row.
Y'all. So glad you could join us tonight for episode number 17 of the Idaho Sheriff Live Question and Answer podcast. We're glad you joined us. We have a lot to talk about. We have some questions that have been circulating around some recent events that have taken place with the current sheriff in Kootenai County. We're also going to talk about men of liberty who do not trade dangerous liberty for certain security. And there's a whole bunch more stuff that if we get through it without, taking questions,
we might get through all the things. We've got people joining us here on Instagram. Had a glitch there in the beginning. I'm glad I moved over. I'm shuffling between tabs. Let me remind those of you who are joining on Instagram that for the best full screen, most interactive experience, join us on Facebook or YouTube, because we can put your comments up on the screen. And even as Dan's answering other questions, we can kind of see the dialogue that's going on. So that's really fun on those Facebook and YouTube platforms.
And Instagram, when it goes to the replay, they don't show up.
They eliminate all the comments.
So that's
it's a bummer. Yeah.
And also last week we had reports that Instagram was down or glitching. However, we watched the entire episode and on Instagram, and it played back flawlessly. So anyway, don't forget, if you love liberty without compromise, go to theidahosheriff.com. You can buy whatever kind of liberty without compromise merch. Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. And also visit theidahosheriff.com to contribute. We desperately need your contributions to help us fight this battle against the establishment, against the deep state current sheriff. And I'm calling him that, a deep state sheriff. And you can also find anything you want about my platform, what I stand for, and really what current things that I'm exposing that's taking place right here in Kootenai County, the greatest county in the greatest state in the greatest nation on earth.
There is a wealth of information on our website. It's ever changing and growing. We have had to become a very fluid campaign. We anticipated that from the beginning, but the campaign we were running on day one is not the same campaign that we're running here in the last day of July. And the website is a reflection of that. There's a result of a lot of work and research, and those resources are all there at theidahosheriff.com.
And all in the attempt to make certain that you all have at your fingertips all of the answers to the questions and frequently the questions that were asked over and over again that we think that we have answered, and yet they pop back up. Well, guess what? If you go to theidahosheriff.com, most likely your question has already been answered.
You've been asked once, do facts and evidence matter to you?
Well, yeah, they actually do. Now, there's something else that we need to remind folks of. Coming up this week, we have tomorrow, Thursday, 6:30 p.m. in Rathdrum, Idaho. Westwood Guns is going to be hosting me for a town hall. Hope all of you guys can come in and see us there. And Duke, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be warm, but Duke has an amazing place there at Westwood Guns. We are going to be talking about liberty and what's going on currently in the country and in Kootenai County and what the role of the sheriff is. A lot of people still don't know what the role of the sheriff is, but 8/4 this Sunday, we have a private meet and greet in Hayden. We have a town hall Monday, the 5th of August at the Hayden Library. So we're going to be doing another town hall there for you to come out. If you can't make it out to Rathdrum or to some of the other locations, yesterday I had the distinct honor to speak with the History Club, and that was just a great time. Those folks, great patriots. They love the country. They love Kootenai County, and they have really good, hard questions.
They did. That was a good group that meets at the Highlands Pub and Grill in Post Falls. And we came out at the end of that better than we were when we entered that room. Yeah,
it was great. And I think Ken Moore that runs that, he has a great thing going, and we really love those people.
And that's open to the public. So if you're interested in that history club, we can get you in touch with them. We have a viewer on Instagram that says he has your yard sign in his yard here in Coeur d'Alene.
Awesome. How's it been going?
He'll have to let us know. Chime in there again and let us know how it's going. Do you have a game camera on your sign? That's the question.
And why are we asking this question?
Well,
we have had a few of them
some
disappear. Yeah. Well, more than a few.
Yeah.
But we were at the Hayden Days Parade this last Saturday. Again, huge shout out to all of my supporters who not only came out to walk with me in this parade, but also those that were on the sidelines cheering us on. It's a great thing to see the Liberty Without Compromise group forming all over the four corners of Kootenai County. Thanks to Worley for letting us come down and speak with those folks on Sunday. I think we've reached just about every section of this great county so
We've
far.
made it around, yeah. And we'll loop around again.
Now, we're going to talk here in a few minutes about the controversy that is still ongoing and picking up steam with Sheriff Bob Norris and using his office to put a bounty on a citizen. But first, I want to talk to you about some things that are very important. Oftentimes I get accused of only talking about the negative things, those things that are wrong with Kootenai County and Bob Norris. And while there is a lot of truth to that, it's also not entirely true, because if you go to any of my meet and greets, which I really hope you'll take the time and effort to come out, you'll hear not only those things, but also what my plan is for the county, what my stance is on liberty in general, and really a whole bunch about the office of the sheriff that most people really don't even understand.
I knew from the beginning, just even for my own personal knowledge prior to you entering the race, there was a lot that I personally didn't know. And so I realized we need to spend more time getting back to the basics because people don't understand the role of the sheriff.
I've been asked many times, why did you decide to run for sheriff? And I'm not going to be negative now and talk about the initial reason, which if you go to any of our previous podcasts, you'll more than likely discover that answer. But the second and almost overreaching reason is I saw what happened in 2020. 15 days to stop the spread. How many of you out there right now watching or listening remembers 15 days to stop the spread? And how many of you, when you heard those words at not only the national level, but also the local level, how many of you said, this is wrong? This is unconstitutional. In fact, it is an end run around the Constitution. You see, there was a bunch of bureaucrats and some elected officials, but a lot of unelected bureaucrats who decided to play God. They thought somehow that, those rights that the government recognizes come from God and God alone, that the government is supposed to be in place to preserve these rights of ours, life, liberty, and property. Well, apparently a virus supersedes all of your rights, the ones that God gives you. So government naturally has the right to tell you you're not essential. How many of you out there remember when you were told you're not essential? Stay home, stay 6 feet apart. You don't matter. You can stay home. We'll figure it out. The government will print trillions of dollars and will eventually swing it back towards you, but you can't collect rent if you are a landlord. You can't go to work if you're a carpenter. You can't run your restaurant or your grocery store unless you're a big box store or a national chain. You see, men of liberty, when they see this tyranny on the horizon, they act accordingly before it gets on their doorstep. And too many people in our country are either uneducated or extremely asleep at the wheel because they don't value liberty. They weren't paying attention to stand up and say to local government, yeah, we're not locking down. You have no authority to shut us down. You have no authority to tell me that my business is or is not essential. And we all knew what they were doing, and yet so many complied. I remember for years, even dating back to when I was in high school, nobody will ever dare take over the United States of America because we are the most heavily armed populace out there, and there is no way that anyone would dare try to take on the American people. Well, that's true. They didn't bring guns. They didn't bring artillery. They didn't bring aircraft. What they brought was fear. Fear of a virus that was allegedly so deadly that bodies would be stacked up so high, the morgues would be overflowing, and it would push us back into the Stone Age. But men of liberty, we knew what they were doing. We knew that these neo-Marxists, these global Marxists, were attempting to destroy the Bill of Rights, and in doing so, destroy the United States of America. And many, many brave people did stand up, but far too many did not. How many of you lost something precious to you because some unelected bureaucrat said, you can't go? How many lost a loved one because they couldn't get to medical treatment in time due to the lockdowns, or they were so fearful of going to the hospital without bringing loved ones around them that they chose to stay home? Your children were locked up. They were told to wear masks. Tyranny reigned for so many people. I personally lost the ability to see my oldest daughter graduate from Navy boot camp. Many of you out there had equal or more heinous things happen to you. And we looked at what was going on, and while we're being told by that rat, Fauci, and bricks and all the other entourage from the CDC and even locally when they would say you have to wear your mask. And now we know arbitrarily they came up with this 6-foot distance. We knew that the masks were not stopping a virus that was way smaller than the fabric of these masks. And we also should have had clues when Gavin Newsom, while he locked down all of California, was partying with his friends at the French Laundry, or Nancy Pelosi was getting her hair done, or the list goes on and on. We knew that tyranny was really here, but too many people did not want to still stand up. They didn't want to separate themselves from the crowd. They didn't want to be that lone person standing up saying, the emperor has no clothes. And then at the same time, we have cities like Minneapolis that are being looted and riots and burned to the ground to the tune of billions of dollars of loss. And all the innocent people that had nothing to do with what happened to George Floyd. They could take over entire city blocks in Seattle. They could lay siege to the federal buildings in Portland for over 100 nights with no repercussion. And they were told they could demonstrate together because they were exercising their First Amendment right to peacefully protest, to express their grievances against their government. And yet the rest of the world was told, you can't even gather in groups. You can't get within 6 feet and wear your mask. And they only had to wear a mask if they were to conceal their faces and their identities. And folks, that should have been a clue for so many people that COVID was a lie. Were people getting sick? Absolutely. Were people dying? Yes. Most likely that was due to medical malpractice when it comes to drugs like remdesivir and being told you can't take hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And you absolutely saw the meltdown of people who were paranoid beyond belief because they were enticed into believing that this thing was going to wipe out all of mankind. And, you know, I come back and I say, where were the leaders during this that acquiesced and helped lock us down? Have they been held accountable? Have they had charges brought up against them for violating people's civil rights? And have they faced a jury of their peers? The answer is no. But they should be. How many people have killed themselves over the past 4 years due to these lockdowns? I'm going to say it again. Men of liberty see the danger on the horizon and they act accordingly. They don't look back in hindsight and go, well, if only I had known then what I know now. Because when it comes to liberty, everyone should already know what tyranny looks like. And we have a current sheriff who bought into the paranoia back in early 2020. A lawman of 30 years with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, a man who claims that he oversaw assets when he was a lieutenant with JRIC, Joint Regional Intelligence Center, where he handled FBI, CIA, U.S. attorneys, and he trained with Mossad and Shin Bet. Well, I'm going to play a video for you, and I want you to look at the current sheriff of Kootenai County and how clueless he was about freedom and tyranny and how much he bought into the lie just a short time ago.
One of the guidelines was, let's only have gatherings of 10 people or less. Well, I have to tell you, I've been around town, driving when I'm going to the grocery store, and I see that we have establishments that are open and have a lot more than 10 people in. Please remember to only use trusted resources and make sure that they're trusted through Panhandle Health, Department of Health and Welfare, and of course the CDC.
So that is current Sheriff Robert Bob Norris, who just a short few years ago during the lockdown was telling you, trusted sources like the CDC, Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, and Panhandle Health. And he was getting after people for gathering in groups larger than, what the CDC recommended. He was your hall monitor. He wasn't espousing any kind of liberty. He wasn't protecting the people's rights. Now, granted, he was a candidate, but he does like to bloviate and brag at many of his town halls that he stood up for the people during COVID.
Well, I think that it comes back to the importance of a man having a doctrine that is immovable, that does not change. Your policies or actions or reactions may change depending on circumstances of the day. But what that's an example of, it's not we don't excuse that Bob Norris at that time because hindsight, he knows what he just displayed to all of us is that his doctrine is not liberty without compromise. He doesn't understand what that is.
It's trust the federal government.
And you don't say, well, he didn't understand liberty then, but he does now. No, that was the test, and he demonstrated that he does not understand personal liberty.
And that happened before he was elected, and the people still elected this man. Now, people say, well, Wilson, what did you do? Well, before I decided to run, this was not motivated by anything more than what my code and what my creed say. I have 2 construction companies, commercial construction companies, and we do a lot of medical remodels. We do a lot of government remodels, government work, rather, small works. And when we heard Jay Inslee say, hey, everybody shuts down, they stay home, what do you think that we did? We gave the governor and the rest of the country the middle finger and said, no, you don't get to tell us what we can and can't do when we're providing for our families. And as an employer of men and women, it's my job as the leader to make certain that my people are taken care of. And that's exactly what we did. I went to my people. I asked them, if you have any concerns, we are going to accommodate you. But for everybody else that believes in liberty without compromise, full speed ahead, we are not going to stop. And we did not. And in fact, I hired more people during COVID than I had prior to and have since. And those days that things were very difficult. Supply chains were broke. You could not get materials. Manpower was very limited because so many guys had decided to take unemployment because they were told they were unessential. But the city of Spokane came to me for 2 projects. They were COVID-related projects. Federal government mandated by city ordinances that they, due to funding they had received, that they had to build 2 shelters, emergency shelters for the homeless. And they came to us and said, look, we don't have plans, we don't have budgets, we don't have all sorts of things, but we need somebody that can come in here and help us work through these and get them done by a certain date and time. And we were awarded multi-million-dollar contracts, and we did just that. I surrounded myself with industry experts, and we presented the challenges before us. And then we worked together based on their advice, and we accomplished every one of these projects on budget, on time. And you do that when men of liberty do not acquiesce, they do not cower, but they act boldly. That courage is catching. You can do mighty things when you defy tyranny and obey God instead. We did not shut down. We never complied one bit. But I'll tell you something else. A short year later, when things were supposedly going back to normal and we had these vaccine mandates, my position on vaccines is very simple: personal liberty. If you want to take the jab, by all means, God bless you for doing it. That's your personal choice. I've said this from the beginning. And if you don't want to, the same rules apply. And I had a couple contracts going at that time with government. And in the state of Washington, I was working on a hospital, a rural hospital. And we were told a couple months in advance that by a certain date and time, it was in the fall, that you must provide vaccine cards for all of your staff that's going to be on hospital grounds. And as the time got closer and closer, they said, where are your vaccine cards? And we said, we don't have them. Well, why not? Because our people chose medical and religious or personally held belief exemptions. And we're not going to violate, their requests. We're not going to force it like the military did in like places like Carhartt. I'll never buy another Carhartt again because they forced their people to take a experimental vaccine or injection. But the hospital and the state came to us and they said, look, we have to be the final say as to whether or not those exemptions are valid or not. And I said, no, you're not. We're not sharing any of our people's personal information with you guys. You have no authority to do this. And they pushed back a little bit. And I said, well, we'll renegotiate the contract because nothing in my contract stipulated that we would have to provide workers with this experimental vaccine. And I said, look, we will renegotiate the contract and I will go somewhere in Washington to find skilled tradesmen that meet this requirement. But at that time, as I recall, less than 16% of the entire state skilled workforce was vaccinated. And I said, it's going to come at a cost. And here's what the approximate cost is going to be. And after a couple of days, they came back and said, yep, no problem. We're going to accept your exemptions. Just stay out of certain areas of the hospital and wear your mask. Now, was this bloviating or are you understanding what I'm putting down? I had contracts. I mean, I had every reason to be concerned about the financial well-being of my business, but that's not the way men of liberty act. And I'm going to tell you that if a man of liberty will stand up for his own people, regardless of what the circumstance or the consequences might be, in this case from the state of Washington, how much more do you think that man will stand up for the people of his county when he's representing them as the sheriff of the county, the first and last line of defense for his people?
I think that transitions in perfectly into a question we're getting from Facebook from Heidi. Thank you for joining us tonight. She says, what motivated you to run for the sheriff's position? And you said earlier, I'm going to skip the part because let's bring some positivity, but
it's two parts, Heidi. The first part was Dawna and I were attending a local town hall of the state legislators who were meeting while they're in session about once a month to tell the public what's going on and answer questions. And we were at one in Rathdrum, Idaho, at a church, I think of Shepherd of the Hills. And right before the legislators who were lined up in front of the stage got ready to begin speaking, Sheriff Bob Norris came and commandeered the mic from the MC. And he went on a several-minute rant, complaining session about why he couldn't provide adequate deputies and coverage to the county because the state wasn't funding the sheriff's office and law enforcement enough. And they had a surplus, and it was up to them to fix it. And he's pointing his finger at them. And I looked at Dawna, and what did I say to you? Do you remember?
You said, if this is the guy standing between us and tyranny, we are in a lot of trouble.
And I was completely disgusted. I've never seen such childness come out of a sheriff. The sheriffs that I've been around, even the sheriffs that I didn't necessarily like, at least they were bold men. They were leaders. They were solid and they were steady. And they did not blame. They did not complain. Now, the second thing is that after the events of 2020, when we saw no equal protection under the law, due process suspended, we look at the January 6 defendants, so many of them that were charged erroneously, as the Supreme Court has now ruled. The FBI took all of their resources off of other things like human trafficking, and they weren't going out and trying to find those that had burned down places like Minneapolis. Instead, they focused on going after grandmas and people that were actually peacefully protesting, but they were caught up in this insurrection provocateurs that staged this whole event. And then when Biden was installed into office, we knew that millions were going to pour over our borders. So by 2022, after seeing this stunt by Sheriff Robert Bob Norris and realizing that the communists, the neo-Marxist globalists were going to attempt to do the same thing again. They weren't successful like they thought. They were pretty close. They're going to do this again. And what has anybody done in this county to get us ready for the next and run around the Constitution? And I concluded that Sheriff Norris had done nothing, and to this day has done nothing. And 4 years later, he has done nothing, although he has been copying my my platform of forming a citizens posse. He names it something else, and he starts to talk in similarities. But he had 4 years and he didn't do anything.
Yeah, vetted citizen volunteers, and even now he brought that into his campaign idea back when he announced. There's been no action taken on that. So is that, okay, this is a new idea I have, and I'll do it if I get reelected,
yeah.
Then I will.
There you go.
So I've in essence wasted the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But reelect me, and I'm going to do some new tricks.
Can anyone outside of the few deputies that have, and I'm talking also about dispatch and jailers and anybody that has received a pay raise, which was due, but outside of that, can any of you in Kootenai County name anything of significance that Bob Norris has truly done for the county? Remember, the sheriff's job is not just managing the department. A businessman like me understands how organizations work because I've been involved with them for 25 years. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with the DOD. I worked with government. And I'll tell you how it works. You have to have all of your people and your resources, your tools, and your people who are your greatest resource have to be taken care of, and they have to understand the mission. And you have all your buildings and whatever that supports them. But you do all that so that you can, over here, take care of the people that is the reason you're formed. What is the sheriff's office for? It's to maintain law and order, the rule of law, and to secure the county. So what has Bob Norris done in the past 4 years to demonstrate to you that he has a great plan for the next 4? Or are you just hiring a glorified cop to put on 5 ridiculous stars on his collar so he can one-up the local chiefs and swag around with his entourage of 12 deputies when he goes to a coffee with your sheriff event? What has he done?
And that's a legitimate question. You can answer it in the comment section because that'll give us something too. We can dialogue about that. That's a legitimate question. He costs the taxpayers
with these little campaign stunts that he, disguises as these coffee with your sheriff. He has them at 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning when most of the working class can attend. And he comes with his entourage of 12. And I did a records request. They do not keep records of how many of their deputies they're bringing, but we've seen this. And in 2023, the entire calendar year, there were 7 events with 12 deputies at 2 hours apiece. You're just under, I think it was like $8,000. I'm now talking in generality, so I may be off. In January through May of this year, he had already held 12. So he's already, superseded it by 5, 6? And then the total cost estimated right now it has cost the taxpayers close to $45,000 in wasted deputy salaries. I mean, he's already said they're all strapped, and he's still down 5 patrol, and I think it's 21 in the jail. But he brings jail captains. I've been there. I've seen he's brought lieutenants, he's brought sergeants, he's brought support staff, all just to have a conversation like I'm having right now with you. The sheriff should be able to do all of that on his own with maybe one other staffer, but it's a complete ridiculous spectacle that Bob Norris puts on, and he has to show everybody that he's the king around here because he's got all these guys that are going to come around and, because the average individual out there, most people don't even know what the difference between the sheriff and a chief is, but, the sheriff's going to come in there and he's going to get asked a question that's so complex that only a jail captain can answer that question. So
the point is this: the sheriff and his administration not only have a duty to fill empty positions, so that there are adequate resources for the community. But it's once those positions are completely filled, not mishandling that and misusing the resource. Those people, his people, then are a resource. Why are they where they are, and what are they doing? Are they performing the functions that really the ones that the taxpayers need them to be doing?
Well, remember that a bunch of the Deputy Sheriff's Association, which turned from the original just plain, we don't have unions in the state of Idaho, but in 2020, about the time that Bruce Matari started working with the PAC, they formed the Fraternal Order of Police, FOP 43, Deputy Sheriff's Association. And you see that the change of the way things started going inside the office, and it wasn't for the good. And so you have a bunch of these deputy gangs running around with Bob that follow him to campaign events. In fact, the Cataldo event, which we talked about 2 weeks ago with the tort claim that was filed by a lady who is claiming, and with witnesses that I have heard firsthand, who have stated that Penny was telling the truth when Bob made extremely vulgar statements about her. Now, again, I don't know them to be true, but I'm being told they're true. And who is flanking him? 2 deputies to a campaign event. Why are 2 deputies following the sheriff? Now, is it against policy?
And that there is...
It's a loose policy. We don't know.
There is evidence of that because there's
they were
photographed
and there were those that know who these deputies are. And I'm not going to name their names right now. I have in the past, but I'm not going to now. So, folks, you got to understand that in Kootenai County, with the regime of Bob Norris with his deputy gang problem, this is also the PAC that defied the KCRCC recommended candidates for county commissioner and for the very important precinct committee people. Bob allowed them to use the seal of the sheriff, the badge. So it fooled people into thinking this was an official endorsement of the sheriff. And then he got in trouble by Brent Reagan, had to go clean it up. And then he said, well, I gave them some permission, but not all the permission. Then Nick Franson, the president of the FOP, put out a post that he didn't think we were going to get. We got a good screenshot of it. And he said, we have been basically dumped on. I'm paraphrasing. And we were told that we could do this, but the very people that we serve and protect now are calling us liars. And then Bob had to go back and do another retraction. And then it was a big mess. And this is what happens, Bob, when you don't do the integrous thing, when you can't draw a line between your employees and your job to serve the people, not your deputies. So in this world right now of Kootenai County, there are 2 camps in the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And we know this because right after this event that we're going to talk about, I had yet another outpouring of county employees in the sheriff's office coming to tell me their frustrations, and we met with some of them. But here it is. You either are in Bob's little fiefdom, you're his buddy, you do his bidding, he helps you, you help him, and then those that don't. And those that don't are given a very, very cold shoulder. And we have heard story after story from deputies and support staff as to how messed up the office is right now. And that's going to change. But folks, this is what this current sheriff has done to your sheriff's office. People used to say, not me, that it was bad under Wolfinger. It's far worse under Bob Norris because he's brought the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department mentality here to Kootenai County.
This leads to another question from Linda on Facebook. Could you specifically detail the dangers of misuse of power from rogue law enforcement officers?
Okay, read that one more time. I want to make sure.
Could you specifically detail the dangers of the misuse of power from rogue law enforcement officers? Or maybe even if you relate that to the type of department that Norris is creating on the heels of what you were just talking about, how could that affect officers that are going out into the community? Are they doing their job objectively and appropriately?
Well, Linda, thanks. Great question. And I'm going to try to work through this accurately. First of all, when it comes to law enforcement officers are called. It's a calling. And if you're not in it because it's a calling, you're in it for the dollars, you're in it for the wrong reason. It's a calling no different than being a pastor or a teacher or some other servant related service. But here's where it gets really difficult. In the sheriff's office or in police departments, we hire a very select few that can pass all of the criteria, and mainly integrity as well as physical and ability to do this job. And if you have these individuals that are a small group and you do not continually preach to them the integrity of the office, the calling, and what our purpose is as law enforcement officers, if we don't run on top of this and monitor it for the attitudes, what happens is you start getting a culture of elitist, of people that are better than the constituents they serve. And that attitude does overflow into the interactions with the public. People that aren't getting served correctly or with the same amount of respect and watching out for people's civil rights the way they should be. And as it has been said often, it's not about what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And Linda, thanks for the question. I've been told by reliable sources in law enforcement here that this isn't just a problem with deputies to the citizenry, but it's also deputies with other agencies here in Kootenai County. And so this elitism, this arrogance has to stop. Now, I am not implying that this is systemic throughout all of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, because it definitely is not. I've met some outstanding deputies who are there doing the right work. And when I am sheriff, these men and women will be rewarded. But those that have been doing wrong, we will find out, and they will be held accountable all the way from command staff down. And I've seen things that I do not like, and I'm going to be investigating further. But it is so important that we have men of discernment and that understand the Constitution and have great temperaments that are not arrogant, that aren't part of a gang, who are servants, so that they're being truthful in all of their reports. They're being truthful to the constituents they serve because they're ultimately seeking justice.
We've got a great group of you that are joining us live on Facebook and YouTube right now. So this is and Instagram also. This is your reminder that if you have a question, you can put that into the comments section and I will get that over to Dan. And if you've got comments as we're talking, I'm going to share those up on the screen. So reminder for those of you on Instagram, it's more interactive if you join on that Facebook or YouTube platform. You know what? We went to a county commissioner town hall last night.
Yes, we did.
And that was, it was a little dry.
Boring.
It was a little dry.
It was boring. But we went because we want to be involved in the community. And so, yeah, you and I sat down. And
did we have any ulterior motives for going to that town hall with the county commissioners?
We did not, but you can play. What was the words of the dog out of the bush beans? Roll that beautiful footage.
We'll see
something like that.
See what anybody has to say about this after we share this.
Comments or thoughts from anybody? You guys are easy tonight. I mean, come on, even the guy in the black hat there, he has lots of things to say about me in other rooms, but he's very quiet in front of me tonight. That's a shame.
Okay. So our little light went out.
But we're still rolling. It's okay.
Rolling.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what that was about?
Well, let's explain what we were sitting there minding our own business. And,
Truly.
And Bruce Matari, who I would say
special deputy, Bob's former
special
campaign manager, who received a special deputization and is the only county commissioner that has this special deputization, which means he has access, folks, to privileged information that you and I don't have.
He holds a lot of roles, and I hear that he shows up at a lot of things. He must have very busy days from beginning to end. But he just couldn't handle that we were sitting there minding our own business. And so a few times throughout the program, he'd ask, anybody have questions, any comments, anything? So that was one of multiple times that he had asked, trying to get a reaction out of anybody in the group. And he just could not help himself but call you out. But here's my favorite part. County Commissioner Bill Brooks toward, I think in that shot, he wasn't sitting there because he left the meeting a little bit early, but he had said one of his accolades was that in his term of service, he has seen to it that all the county commissioner meetings are on YouTube, unedited for us citizens to go back and watch and review and see exactly what's going on. And we're getting 100% of the lowdown with nothing added, nothing taken away. So what was hilarious to me about this clip right here, I did not edit this clip minus down end to end. And when Bruce Matari made his comment, even the guy in the black hat.
And I'm the only one with the black hat.
There was magically some post-production split screen going on in that shot.
Yeah. And if you don't believe us, you can download it from the Kootenai County YouTube page as well. Well, look, Bruce, here's the deal. The difference between you and me, and this is why a DC politician like you doesn't belong in Kootenai County. You see, we actually have respect for people and the decorum of the meetings that they're in. Unlike you, who came to several of my meetings where I was getting a chance to talk and spread my message, and you attempted to interrupt them. You attempted to embarrass. You attempted to shame me. Believe me, I had several things that I'm dying to talk to you about in your mismanagement and the things that you're helping to cover up with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. So, unlike you, I don't have to grandstand. I know my place and time, and your time is coming. And let me tell you, I'm your Huckleberry.
And that's not a threat. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Challenge.
There you go.
How much time do we really have? 15 minutes? Have we got more questions, or can I talk more about?
Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it. Knock yourself out.
My favorite subject as of the past week is Bob's abuse of power when it comes to his position. Linda, we just talked about this a second ago, but let's take folks back who may not be aware of this. I mentioned earlier that there was an event, a candidate event last April, right before the primaries out in Cataldo. And at this event, you had candidates for county commissioner, I think state legislature, and sheriff. And it was at this event that Sheriff Bob Norris allegedly said some extremely lewd, sexually driven comments towards a constituent. And it was witnessed in front of several people. And this woman hired a law firm, a big law firm, who took this case on, and they served Kootenai County and Sheriff Bob Norris with a tort claim. Now, a tort claim is required statutorily for an offended party or a injured party to go before their government body to say, hey, this is what happened. We're demanding you guys make this right, typically monetarily. And they have 90 days to respond. And at that point, depending on if the county decides to take it serious and settle with the injured or the claimant, then it goes to a lawsuit. So we're in that first little window. And I said last week, the best thing to do when you are named in lawsuit is to shut your mouth, shut your mouth, shut your mouth. And business people, we especially know that. Apparently, Sheriff Bob Norris does not know that, or narcissistic type of tendencies compelled him to put and we're going to go to slide number 7. This, again, came from Sheriff Bob Norris using the official seal of the sheriff's office to put out this press release, which I found out it was written, it was stated that it was written by Lieutenant Zachary Sifford, and my understanding from folks on the inside that he did not write that, but they slapped his name on it.
Well, yeah, it was probably...
So here's what he says. Sheriff Norris offers $10,000 reward in frivolous lawsuit. Now, it's not a lawsuit, it's a tort claim, right? So Bob probably wants to fix that. Sheriff Norris is being accused in a tort claim of saying derogatory statements towards Penny Ann Collinson at an April campaign event in front of about 50 people. Not only are these allegations false, Sheriff Norris is posting $10,000 of his own money for video proof of such frivolous claims made by Ms. Collinson. Ms. Collinson's allegations are 100% false. The frivolous tort claim is similar to the one filed by failed 2020 sheriff candidate John Grimm before May 24 primary. This is another effort to tarnish Sheriff Norris's credibility. He doesn't really need much help on that, by the way. I will not allow political operatives to tarnish my reputation, says Norris. There is a small group of people who think it's okay to use to use the judicial system to smear local elected officials, and that needs to stop. Sheriff Norris is offering $10,000 of his own money for any video evidence that made by his accuser. Sheriff Norris is evaluating all options, including a countersuit where he can seek damages from these false allegations. Sheriff Robert B. Norris by Lieutenant Zachary Sifford. Okay, I've said this before, folks. The sheriff used his position, his authority, with official county emblems, the sheriff's badge and the patch. And if you go back up there, you'll see that. And he's basically put a bounty on a citizen who has already accused him of doing wrong. I can only imagine what the attorneys are saying right now in Kootenai County.
I don't know. Well, here's another question related to that. So he had a couple of deputies there.
Mm-hmm.
If they cover for him in court, can it be established that they've lied? And would they lose their post certification?
Well,
if it's established that they lied. It's a little hypothetical.
Hypotheticals. And yes, untruthfulness, when found out, it has a lot of repercussions. Not only can you become decertified with POST, which is the Peace Officers Safety and Training Authority, who oversees law enforcement in the state, but also you get put oftentimes on a Brady list. Now, I can't remember if Idaho has a formal Brady list, but it basically is a list that prosecutors keep on hand and defense attorneys to discredit you, to impeach you from ever being able, once you're put on this list, from being able to testify because you've been proven a liar. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of people that are probably going to be wanting to make certain that they don't catch themselves in any kind of a perjury trap. So, but the sheriff used his authority, put a $10,000 bounty. It doesn't matter whether it's his own money or not. He used the authority of his office to go after somebody who, she's saying it's a tort claim over things said. When you look at what it was said, it borderlines sexual assault, or sexual harassment. Let me rechange that. Not sexual assault, but sexual harassment, which is clearly forbidden in any agency across the entire country, to include Kootenai County. So I don't understand what Bob was thinking, but maybe because he's on his $182,000 a year disability retirement, which we don't know the real whole nature because he's never disclosed, but he says he has a 13 and a 12% injury that allows him to get
a couple of rusty shoulders.
Yeah, $180,000. I say that my belief, by watching his emotional outbursts, that it's far greater than that. And I believe that this is a great example of a man that has no discretion, and he acts on impulse, and he goes after anybody that dares to offend him. So today in the Coeur d'Alene Press, we go to slide number, what slide is that? It's the Sheriff comments by John Grimm. I don't know if I have this number up here.
I'm looking for it. I'll
Sheriff comments. So there was a letter to the editor today at the Coeur d'Alene Press.
I got it.
Thanks. The dated July 31. I'm going to read this. So remember what I said earlier. He mentioned failed candidate John Grimm. He claimed that John Grimm had filed a tort claim. So here's John Grimm. He says, I'm setting the record straight on Sheriff Norris's false claim in his July 23rd press release regarding the potential defamation lawsuit he and the county taxpayers face. Ms. Collinson's claims has nothing to do with me. I was not there, although I have spoken with many who were. I have not, nor have I ever, filed a tort claim against Bob Norris or Kootenai County. Not yet. Again, Sheriff Norris, I demand a public retraction and apology for your statement, which has now gone national. Way to go, Bob. It is an inappropriate and unethical for an elected sheriff to use taxpayer-owned forum in what appears to be an attempt to place a bounty on the heads of law-abiding citizens. History is full of political zealots who commit crimes against others when incited. A recent example is last month's arson fire in Sandpoint, which seems politically motivated. Sheriff Norris's behavior could put innocent citizens in danger and Kootenai County taxpayers on the hook for his careless accusations. Sadly, deflection, attacking an opponent's character or motive rather than answering the argument are established and predictable behavior patterns for Bob Norris. That is true. In an attempt to call our motives into question, both Norris and his allies in the press emphasize, quote, former or failed sheriff candidate, unquote, when printing the names Mike Bauer or John Grimm. I've spoken at great length with Mike Bauer. He's a good man. Mike ran for office for the same reason I did. We care about our community and neighbors. We are critical of the sheriff because of what we know about him and the direction Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is heading. We must prevent further infiltration of the Los Angeles County sheriff gang mentality in Kootenai County. I sincerely hope it is not too late. John Grimm. And John, I agree with you. I think that you articulated this very well, what the issue is. And folks in Kootenai County, understand that you are facing a chance to continue with this bullying, with this emotionally disturbed individual, or unstable rather. I'll say unstable. Or you can go find what it's like to work with somebody that has a far different perspective and that is extremely measured and proven track record, that has managed many, many men and women and budgets from his own making, not from the taxpayers. Look, this year, the budget has gone from fiscal year 24 of about 43 million to 50 million. And I've been getting a lot of records requests on what they're spending. And there's a lot of stuff that looks extremely sketchy to me. We're going to be talking about this more in the weeks to come, but ultimately, folks, you do not want a sheriff's office that is weaponized against the people. And Bob, the best advice I can give you is when you're faced with a lawsuit, shut your mouth, shut your mouth, and especially shut your mouth.
I think what really draws that home is you still have a section of people that says, look, they're just going to join the club of this is just a frivolous lawsuit and people need to stop doing this. People in general, or this person generalizing has a history, needs to stop doing this. And that question came up in a meeting that you were in yesterday where right. A lady said it's 10,000 of his own money and
what's the big deal?
Kind of what's the big deal with a smile? What's the big deal? And where it really hit home, where you were able to respectfully answer that question and say,
it's all great until you're the one that's facing the wrath or the attention of an out of control sheriff.
And what is your defense against that when an entire department or government organization is being weaponized against you? So it may seem like minutia, but this is important. It's important to understand really that abuse of power.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the interesting articles that was forwarded to me this past week by my former chief, it's a very interesting read, and I want to read it to you if I can remember what slide it is here. I think it's slide number 9. Do I have slide number 9 up here?
All the way down to number 9.
I got to find it on mine.
Well, I put it up on the screen, but you know what? It's upside down.
Basically, what it's talking about is, oh man, never let a carpenter
rotate.
We're going to put a link and we'll read it again next week. But in essence, Kentucky has in their legislature started a bill that would strip away all federal law enforcement's ability to be considered post-certified in their state. They are no longer considered peace officers in the state because of their continual abuse of power as demonstrated all over the country. And other states like Montana, and there's a few more I don't recall, have all jumped on this bandwagon. And we're starting to see a change across this country where the states are once again asserting their 10th Amendment rights and saying that we don't believe that these federal law enforcement agencies are constitutional, and nor should they be running all over top of our people. I had a question yesterday, and this woman who has not been one of my fans, she says, well, I got a question for you. I got a scenario. What happens? What advice would you give me if I'm a single woman in my home alone and the FBI comes banging on my door? And I looked at her and I said, and she says, without a warrant. And I said, don't let him in. Plain and simple. Don't even talk to him. And after a couple of seconds, she says, that's all you have to say? And I'm like, well, yeah, don't let him in. They have no reason to be there. And then she says to me, she says, well, this is what Sheriff Bob says. And by the way, I was at the town hall where he said this, so I know she was 100% certainly correct. She says, well, Bob says that if you find yourself in this situation, call him And he will send deputies out there to look at the situation and potentially arrest the FBI or whoever is trying to, serve the warrant or whatever they're there for. And I looked at the people in their room and I said, how many of you in this room have Bob Norris's phone number? And out of 30 plus people, one hand went up. And this guy happens to be a friend of Bob's and a official endorser on his webpage. Here's the deal. As I told her, the FBI doesn't give you a heads up that they're coming so you can call the sheriff. And in fact, when they come to your house and they have a warrant and they're ready to serve that warrant, they are not waiting for you to call the sheriff. They're going to break your door down. They're going to haul you out in cuffs, and they're going to have their way with your house, your possessions, your property, and potentially you. And that's the way it goes. Instead, you need to have a sheriff that sets the limit immediately with all these federal law enforcement agencies and tells them exactly what's going to happen and what will not happen, and the things that are acceptable and the things that are not acceptable. And remember, we've already had Supreme Court rulings showing that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, historically predating the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So while the sheriff isn't mentioned necessarily in the Constitution, even Scalia ruled in his majority ruling opinion, rather, he opined in his opinion on the majority ruling of Prince versus U.S., which was Sheriff Mack and several other sheriffs suing the Clinton administration over the administration at the county level of the Brady Bill. And Scalia said, look, the founders were very, very clear when they said that there will be parallel governments and that the federal government cannot put into its service the county sheriffs and local law enforcement to do its bidding because it would have unlimited power at that point. And remember that Hamilton in Federalist 85 said, we can rely safely on the disposition of the state legislatures to erect a barrier against the national government because the founders understood that not only do we have the separation of powers between the three branches, but it's also vertically. We have parallel governments at the county state level, the same that we have at the federal level. We're accountable to each other, but not to be ruled by each other. And so a good sheriff would have understood that and not give a bloviating, nonsensical answer to the people. And it's out there, folks. I'm not making this up. You can go to any of his town halls from November, September of 2023, and you can hear these clips. It's nonsense. But a guy that supposedly handled all those FBI assets and CIA and, don't take my word for it. It's on his reelect Norris for sheriff and the county website talking about all of his experience. A guy like this is way too comfortable with the feds, and he does not have the ability to separate himself from those that he became very well acquainted with and friends and the people that he serves. And we have seen the abuse of the FBI in numerous occasions over and over and over again, to include what they did recently with the Patriot Front debacle that happened in June of 2022. And there's been some outstanding reporting and revelations through information requests that Casey Whalen has uncovered about the FBI interjecting themselves into a local jurisdiction over crimes that were not federal in nature. And then obstructing, prosecutorial obstruction, and judges throwing these cases out. But if you had a sheriff that actually understood what he was doing to begin with, that understood what it meant to be the chief law enforcement officer of the county and not play footsies with your lifelong love boyfriends, the FBI, the CIA, the ATF, whatever. These things would not be happening. I guarantee you they will not be happening under Dan Wilson's administration.
Do you have any other topics that you want to cover tonight before we bring it to a close?
We've been asked this question over and over again. Didn't the sheriff's race already occur?
That's a good one. Didn't we already vote for the sheriff? Isn't that already over?
Why is Dan Wilson still running?
He's
hanging on. He's hanging on. He just can't quit. Kind of like Kerry Lake.
Trying to get him to reverse it.
Kind of like Kerry Lake, right? Can't refuse to lose. Look, as an independent, I did not have a primary, so that means that I automatically go to the general election in November. So I'm an independent. I will be on the ballot against Robert B. Norris. It's going to be Dan Wilson, Robert Norris for sheriff. And remember, register to vote. If you are not, inclined to be a Republican, if you're not inclined to be a Democrat, be an independent. There is nothing that says that you can't be an independent and vote for whoever is the best person for the job. We've been divided for far too long by party lines, and I'm seeing some of this firsthand. It's good to align yourself with what your ideals are, but when it's party over principle, folks, that's what's getting us killed right now in this country, because we are too married to a party rather than to people that will do the work, that will do the heavy lifting, that will represent the people and then go back on their way, that don't want to become lifelong career politicians. So
that leads to a good point, too, that you can register it for whatever party that you want. You can vote however you want in that general election. It was a little bit different in the primary, so it can be confusing. Yeah,
so as I think you register, I'm going to forget this, I'll get it wrong, but basically if you unaffiliate your registration, that means you're an independent and you can vote across the spectrum, not in a primary, but at the general election. So whoever the position is for whatever elected office, you can choose like the rest of everybody can when it comes time to
You can be registered as a Republican and vote for Dan on the ballot.
Yes, you can.
That's just to be
In fact, I
clear.
understand that there are a lot of very unhappy KCRCC folks who saw the double cross of Bruce Matari and Bob Norris over the Fraternal Order of Police flyer that went out that insinuated that the sheriff's office was supporting non-KCRCC PC committeemen. And look, I'm never going to play games. I'm not loyal to any group. I'm loyal to the Constitution. I'm loyal to the fidelity of upholding the Bill of Rights. And I will give everybody equal protection under the law. I'm not going to be giving any special favors to a party or to any respecter of persons. I'll give no less respect to any persons either. And you've seen this over and over again when I worked patrol. I approached this as sheriff the same way when I was out on the road, and you went with me on many of these calls. I never showed up at a scene and started demanding what's your political affiliation, what's your gender, what's your race, what's your ideology. Everybody was treated with respect and the equal protection under the law as is mandated by the Bill of Rights. So I think that's why people should really look across every spectrum, whatever party lines you are. If you have a choice between Bob Norris, who you have seen does a lot of shady stuff and doesn't respect people, doesn't respect women, unless you're a donor, versus a guy that has said, I'm unabashedly conservative. My worldview is that of a conservative man. But I believe in the Bill of Rights, and I have sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, which means you're right. We will give every citizen in this county equal protection under the law, and you can count on it.
A comment from YouTube says, all parties are a mess right now. I think it's smart that you're running as an independent.
Yeah, thank you. As I have somewhat distanced myself from being a lifelong Republican and a former young Republican board member, I've started to see a lot of things that I'm very, very concerned about. And if things look, the founders did not want parties because they knew that it was eventually going to turn into this mess that we have. And all you have to look at is the bloviating from the Republicans in Congress that say, if we can just get the House and the Senate this time, we mean business, we'll do things. And then they're feckless, they're cowards, they do nothing, absolutely nothing. You can't even tell me one thing that the Republicans have done very well nationally in the past 5, 6, 7 years. And by the way, the Democrats, you're just as bad. You guys have been doing things to damage us severely over the years, to give more federal overreach instead of letting it go back to the states the way the founders intended it under the 10th Amendment. So look, there's a lot of blame to go all the way around. And I say Dan Wilson is ready to lead right here at ground zero, this county, to remind Americans across the spectrum, whatever your belief is, as long as you believe in the Bill of Rights, the laws of nature and the nature's gods, the rights to life, liberty, property, liberty without compromise, I'm your man. And I'm ready to lead a group that says No more. We are going to stand first for the Constitution and our neighbor, and then we'll start having dialogues again, and whoever has the best arguments wins.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I got one more fun thing, and then I'll let you kind of lead us toward the end. But how many of you like to, in a comment section on social media, it seems like the most appropriate thing when there's nothing to say and you can't put the words together, you click on that GIF button and you go find your perfect GIF that you're like, this is like the supreme response to what's going on in the comment section right now. So I got a surprise for you. We have custom GIFs. If you search the Idaho Sheriff.
One word, the Idaho Sheriff.
All one word, run it all together, the Idaho Sheriff. And I'm going to let you find the surprise on the other end of some the Idaho Sheriff, Dan Wilson custom GIFs that might be the most appropriate response in that comment section. And that also is a reminder too, that a part of volunteering on our campaign is being active on social media, responding to they're not all arguments. Some people have legitimate questions. They might say, Bob Norris, I heard Bob Norris is doing a great job. Who's this Dan Wilson dude? Why is he running? You can be part of our posse that goes on and dialogues, has respectful dialogues with people there on social media.
Absolutely. And we always appreciate those that will show the truth, because there's a lot of lies that are going around, a lot of nonsense that is said about me that we have continually addressed over and over again. And it's great when people come together to say, yeah, this is a non-issue. It's already been covered, and we need to move on and talk about important things that are affecting the county, like whether or not we've had any cyber audits recently. See a lot of cyber attacks going on, and I'm going to be coming to you next week with a lot of heavy things, talking more about the extreme liability the county currently is in due to the inability of the Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit contract with the county to be executed properly. I've asked for the records. I've received all that they have. And from a businessman's standpoint and from other industry experts, they're saying it looks like Kootenai County is exposed with this helicopter. So we're going to be talking about that next week. We're going to be talking about some more things that you in the county need to be aware of going into the fall election. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. I enjoy this every week. I enjoy the prep. I enjoy getting to come out and speak with you. Remember, the ultimate message is liberty without compromise. We did not descend from fearful men. We descended from men who understood the times. They acted accordingly, and they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. That has been passed down generation after generation, to include my grandfather, who fought World War II in the South Pacific, and my daughter and son-in-law that recently have been serving in the United States Navy. It's now up to all of us to maintain the rule of law, to maintain liberty for all. Let's join together. Let's show the entire country what a united county looks like. Let's become that shining city on a hill for all other counties around this great country to see what a united people does. Stay hopeful, stay strong, courageous. May God bless you. May God bless Kootenai County. May God bless America. Good night.
Thank you for joining us tonight for the Idaho Sheriff Livestream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. We're here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. The handle is The Idaho Sheriff. There you're going to receive automatic reminders when we go live. And for the Idaho Sheriff podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. As always, learn more about Dan Wilson, his platform, and his viewpoints on our website at theidahosheriff.com. I'm also going to add that you can donate securely online, and we need you to join us in this cause of liberty without compromise. We need the financial donations.
I don't have the billionaire donors that Bob literally has. We
don't have the billionaire backing, so we need every single person to be involved. So you can donate online.
I don't have drug money coming towards me either.
No weed, no. None of any kind.
No. Nobody from the cannabis business supports me. But anyway, good night, folks.
See you next week.